This is the scene, the end scene from Fight Club. And to me, is a depiction of the end of Bitcoin and the enterprise. Pretty nasty. Yeah, in my view, Bitcoin is dead. Particularly Bitcoin and the enterprise. I mean, there are still some reasons to have it around. The only application that I think that befits the blockchain right now, and I'm talking blockchain as a form of a distributed ledger. There may be other distributed ledgers that will prove themselves as time goes on. But blockchain is particularly well suited for currencies because of its immutability. And also because it is so difficult to change. I mean, you don't want your money to change. But it still has many problems, at least the implementation of Bitcoin. And so when we talk about Bitcoin and blockchain, we can't really separate the two because Bitcoin is the Trojan horse for blockchain. Blockchain is the thing that was thrust upon industry and what they tried to then embrace and take that solution and apply it to all sorts of different problems. And, anybody that knows anything about building systems, that you cannot build the solution first and then try to find problems that it will solve. It's like saying, I'm going to build a better mousetrap and the world will come to me. It just doesn't happen. It's the same, it's one of the principles that we have in law, too. You don't go and find somebody that you want to prosecute or investigate and then see what crimes they committed. You are presented with a crime and investigate the crime and then see who committed it. I just thought I'd throw that in there. It's an interesting analogy, and it's something that's been coming up recently, and it's particularly relevant in today's geopolitical climate. Blockchain. So where are we today in the blockchain? Really haven't moved very much. We're still in the midst of this minor bear pennant, which is breaking out of a larger bear pennant. That is the bearnario. By the way, those are my two new coined words, bearnario and bullnario. Those are concatenations of bullish scenario and bearish scenario. I'm going with it, man. Blockchain is dead, and there are so many reasons why. You probably want me to talk about it a little bit, I guess. I know that there's going to be a lot of pundits out there that will look at today's current market and dropping below that 4,000 barrier, dropping below that 6,500, now below 4,000 and into the 3,000s and possibly down below 2,000. Significant levels, at least from a psychological point of view, although I never really put much credence in this whole idea of psychological levels. It makes no sense. It's all supply and demand. But there's significant headwinds against blockchain not only from this sort of technical problem that we have, the lack of people that are interested in it anymore, the SEC and the regulators that are coming down on it and cracking down on all individuals and others that are really using blockchain as a as kind of a Ponzi or a, well, basically as a Ponzi scheme, fraudulent. There's also the problem that I think something on the order of 750,000 miners have now exited the space. See, am I showing my face right now? I am. 750,000 miners have fled the scene. They just couldn't handle it anymore. It's going to cause a significant decrease in the hash rate. And that will affect particularly proof-of-work blockchain platforms like Bitcoin and Ethereum, the two biggest. That's got a, well, I can feel for them. This is millions and millions of dollars. What other industries might this affect? This is obviously going to affect graphics cards like NVIDIA and others. But blockchain, you know, the scenarios, the proof of concepts that are out there, there were something on the order of, I don't know, well, there were certainly literally thousands of ICOs that came onto the scene, of which only a certain number of them actually had working projects going. Most of them were nothing more than white papers and a website with moving little graphics and a timeline, of course. All just total fraud. And that is 98% of what's out there. So a very small percentage of them, maybe something on the order of 200, 230, 240 of these, actually had projects behind them. They hired people. Not, you know, they didn't just fill up LinkedIn with a bunch of fake people. They actually hired people to work on these things. And of all of those, I think even consulting organizations like Gartner or Deloitte have recognized that there's only a handful, maybe 14, maybe 15 tops projects that have moved into some kind of limited live production mode, but it's really still just proof of concept. And even of those, people really only expect maybe 10%. So we're only talking about maybe one or two projects that might have some validity. Or have a chance of moving on. Now, that's not to say there may not be more coming down and backfilling, but I wouldn't expect of those that actually have real funding, more than 10% of them having a chance. I mean, that, and I'm using 10% as, you know, the normal rate of failure for most businesses. But I think that blockchain and blockchain-based businesses have a particularly hard road to hoe. I think that's what I wanted to say. Particularly hard. And that is because of the nature of the technology behind it. And I'll talk about that in a moment. I mean, blockchain in and of itself, because of its immutable nature, because of its inflexibility, because of its, really, its poor performance has had a real problem trying to find a home in different types of scenarios, different types of use cases. There are some where it is gaining some traction. At first it was in financial services. Now it's moved on to things that are more regulatory in nature, things like, I don't know, healthcare and maybe even agriculture or communications. And so it may find some usefulness there, but again, it is this kind of solution looking for a problem that is really the issue here. Why is somebody... Yes. Yeah, you're going to have to wait until I finish my my recording. I'm actually online right now. Shouldn't be more than half an hour. All right, bye. Where was I? There are really only, a few major players in the enterprise world when it comes to blockchain too. And most people don't even know that they exist. People that are in the blockchain or the Bitcoin space, people that are into altcoins, they think that all these other altcoins actually have some chance of moving forward. But things like, Hyperwave Fabric and R3 and there's a few others that are out there. And maybe even Hedera Hashgraph, although they haven't made as much of an inroad to mainstream enterprise. They still have, I think, a good product. But see, the biggest problem that blockchain has really is as a development platform. It is really nothing more than a database. And if you if you have some sort of programming background or database background, it is fundamentally different from other types of databases that exist today. Other databases are more centralized, but that gives them certain advantages in terms of performance, the ability to be able to upgrade them. Their performance is, there's no comparison because and also innovation. If you wanted to make changes to something that is more centralized, it's far easier, and particularly in the distribution. Where blockchain is just woefully inadequate in all of those areas. The cost of maintaining something that you can't even force your users to adopt new versions of, and something that has to be backwardly compatible all the way through to the oldest versions, all the way back in the line. I mean, that is unheard of. It would stifle innovation to try to adopt a blockchain platform. Or innovation would be extremely slow, if non-existent. You wouldn't be able to adapt or move with the changes, the sign of the times. Infrastructures are virtually impossible to design around it. There's this bigger idea that you could have this sort of public blockchain infrastructure that people could build on top of. Maintaining a blockchain software is also extremely expensive. The people who you would develop or have developed the software or the dApps, the business models that would have to adopt to that decentralized culture. All of this stuff is just totally foreign to everything. It is simply not a viable technology for enterprise. Yet we're going to continue to move down there because there's going to be people that are in positions of power with money that will push blockchain for as long as it is or carries the moniker as something that is progressive and looking forward and futuristic. Until they have to start paying for it, then they're going to start saying, this fucking sucks. Now, most people that are that are not in the industry but have lost interest in it because of all the regulatory issues and other things are already developing that sentiment that it sucks. People in enterprise are getting pushed by investors and others, and they've pushed big money into it. Now they're being looked towards or to actually have a return on that money, and they're starting to realize there is no return. And so they're going to have to swallow that pill. It's kind of like the same thing with big insurance companies that have moved forward for a long time with mainframes, and they're really realizing that they really can't. They're having a hard time moving away from it because all their business and industry is so inculcated in that mainframe. But they know that they have to bite the bullet and spend it on decentralized or distributed systems, centralized systems, not blockchain, but centralized systems, application servers, that sort of thing. But it's going to cost a huge amount of money, and they're not going to see a return in any time soon. And the first executive to make that decision, they're going to get their ass fired. All those people that have made that decision to go into blockchain, they're going to get their ass fired. The difference, though, is that at least going from a mainframe to centralized distributed services is performant, and eventually it will work out for the better. Blockchain is almost like going back to mainframe. It's actually getting worse. And I don't think that most people really understand that. They don't have a handle on the technology. They have no idea what the technology is all about or the implication of it. And this is one of the reasons why I've been so down on blockchain from a fundamental point of view. There is no future. There is no fundamental future for a blockchain economy or a purely decentralized economy. I just don't see it. There's not enough. There's no return on investment. It doesn't solve problems and make things better. It might have some cool features, but it doesn't make things better from a big point of view, big picture point of view. Yeah, we get some comments going now. Yeah, so all these reasons, I am a big downer on blockchain technology. Now, there are some DAGs, directed acyclic graph, things like hash graph, things that are not tied to this sort of serial nature of blockchain, which is nothing more than a linked list of things. There are some applications of it that are performant, that are a little easier to swallow, and so they take away some of the edge, but even those still suffer from the primary problems. So there will be use cases where blockchain and distributed ledger technology will make some sense, but it is not the panacea that everybody thought. It is not the next internet. Even I said that, I believe, in 2017. Even I said that. For a very short period of time, until I sat down and thought about it. I got caught up in the wave, and I jumped onto the wave, and I was being carried with the wave. But only for about a month or two. And then after watching some and listening to some of the so-called pundits in the industry and their idiocy, their idiocracy, I stepped back and put on my enterprise architect hat and realized very quickly, what would I do if I had to go advise the C-level folk of a Fortune 5, Fortune 100, Fortune 500 company? How would I approach it? And that's when I started doing more research and thinking about this and what they would actually have to do. And it came very quickly. And it didn't take me very long, a couple of weeks, to realize that there was no future from a bigger point of view, a general sense, or at least the hype wave that had been developed. There is no future for blockchain, but it's going to take a long time for the public to realize this. Because hype sells. Hype really sells. See what some people are saying. Shrapnel says, I'm hearing more on the radio about Bitcoin again. Well, that's really, I think, desperate parties that have a lot invested that are trying to revitalize it. Nothing can stop canopy growth. That's a reference to a marijuana stock. I had other more philosophical reasons, too, that I had developed why blockchain was untenable. And I had likened it. A lot of people are man. Yes, sir. You have this affinity for calling me while I am... wait, hold on. How you doing? I'm broadcasting live. Okay. Well, yeah, I've been talking that too. Low volatility kills.
Yep. But the good news is that I lost all about 1%, 2%.
Yeah. Okay. You can make that up in a few trades. Bye. Yeah, that was just partner saying we don't have many trades going on in the AI setups right now, and actually trying some other trades that are outside of the AI service, and which I think is probably a mistake because of the low volatility right now. And he said it's the first day in our trade room that he's actually experienced a loss, but he said it was only about 1%. So that's pretty good. It's a pretty good record. 110 days now, I think. 105 days. And first day, a loss in the room. And it wasn't an AI call. So that's working out pretty good. All right, so let's get back to this blockchain shit. I was talking about a philosophical point of view. I said that, one thing that blockchain is really about, it's kind of like it's not a decentralization. It's the ultimate in centralization in terms of its governance. Everything kind of revolves around some key players the whales, the miners, the exchanges, the developers. And they're all kind of a cabal. The governance is centralized. It's the same governance across the entire population, the network. It locks you in. It is like the ultimate. If everybody was tied to blockchain, it would be like the ultimate tool for a dictatorship or a communist country. It has been sold something that it is not. As a matter of fact, it is the mirror image of what it has been sold as. This thing that gives you this freedom from censorship. I don't buy that for a second. And because of that, because I'm now associating it with what I consider the ultimate evil, I'm saying now that I believe that a blockchain currency is the epitome of a tool for evil. How's that? There you go. Blockchain is fucking evil. Bitcoin Bubble says, your old channel you shilled Bitcoin Cash. No, I didn't. Never did that, ever. I did talk about some of the hype programs for a little bit and how you could game them. That wasn't shilling them. I was saying, look, I recognize what they are, and let's try to game them until they go away. So that is true. I did that for a couple of episodes, but that was it. Never pushed any Bitcoin Cash or Bitcoin. So you're remembering wrong. All right, so now you can't get me on that. Now I'm a pot shill. But at least what have I shilled in pot stocks? If anything, I've said that the market is grossly overvalued. I mean, that's all I've said. So again, another criticism that has been shot down. Where is the dog? The younger dog passed away Friday. Let's see. Hayseed says, so if Bitcoin is off the table, what's the new narrative for people to look at now? There's no new narrative. I mean, look, you can probably still trade the darn thing. And it might be useful as, idiots are useful. And that is true, Shrapnels, that every transaction, at least in Bitcoin, is traceable. A lot of people are going to find that out the hard way. I said Bitcoin Cash was... Yes, I did. I said that in one episode, but that's not shilling it. I said that Bitcoin Cash, in my view, at least in its implementation, was a better Bitcoin. That it was closer to the original vision, Satoshi vision. So I did say that, but in no way is that shilling it. That's like saying that hard shit is better than diarrhea. And Bitcoin Bubble says, you also said Junto Coin, which was an unregistered security that you shilled that would have indexed crypto. Okay, so first of all, I never shilled a cryptocurrency. What I did was I shilled an idea, a membership to a club that is still going. And I said very plainly that before I allowed anybody to buy Junto Coin, it had to clear regulatory hurdles. And this was at the time when everyone thought that the SEC was going to come out with new regulation, and they kept on shutting down ETFs and kept on pushing it off and avoiding the issue. because I couldn't see any way that I could get around the Howey test and prove that it wasn't a security. So the idea was to get around the Howey test by taking the onus of a centralized person who is sort of sponsoring the coin or token as also the director of the underlying fund, because people that buy the coin would expect a return if it were in fact like a token of some sort, or some asset. And by doing that, by actually putting that onus on the owners, the collective intelligence of the people who owned the coin, and let them make the decisions, I thought I could get around the Howey test. But so far that has not proven true, at least based on SEC lawyers and the Howey test lawyers and crypto lawyers. So until the SEC actually, or Congress, modifies the treatment of cryptocurrency in terms of an asset, and that I can prove that it is a completely investor-driven security, and then that will pass the Howey test, Junto coin is in stasis. So that is the point of and so, like I said, I haven't sold any Junto coin yet. I sold a membership to the club, of which I said I'd take a portion of that membership in those people's name and put it into this fund that they can then determine its outcome and how it is spent. But that's where it stopped. Still think the idea is good. Just have to wait for some regulatory clarity. I knew from the moment I got to know blockchain, it is the vehicle for the mark of the beast. So you want to get out and then go homesteading. So, but now blockchain is bullshit. I've always said blockchain is bullshit. I've said it. I've been saying it for a year now. Is it a year? Over a year. Almost a year and 5 months. So, all right. So I've gone through all the comments. That is my my position on blockchain. Blockchain, I believe, is a dead technology. It would need significant updating in what it does, how it performs, to become sort of a generalized platform for enterprise applications. There is some possibility in other types of distributed or decentralized ledgers, such as DAGs, with more innovative consensus mechanisms. The gossip of gossip consensus mechanism that is implemented along with the decentralized governance model of Hedera, in my view, is the most superior that I've seen to date as a generalized platform. Most everything else, and I know that that's kind of Greek to a lot of people. Of course, it's coming from a Greek. But that's that. Blockchain bullshit. Blockchain dead. Long live blockchain. In our memories. I don't understand this argument. Iceman says, okay, Bitcoin going down, but so is Apple. What happened to the Bitcoin must die to survive? Yeah. And it must, I still believe that it must come down to some unbelievably low enough level that you can get rid of all of the shit coins that are out there so that you're left with just the things that might have a chance and then build on top of that. That is really that's its path to survival. Oh, I don't care if you're pre $100. Why don't you just pat yourself on the back? No one really gives a shit. I really don't care. Can I explain blockchain to the average person? All right. So it is essentially a ledger, or like an accounting ledger, to keep track of transactions. It does it in such a way that the recording of those transactions are decided upon a very large network of people, so that there is a great deal of surety and certainty that the transactions are valid. It doesn't need a centralized bank or intermediary or third party in order to bring two people together to do a transaction. And so from that point of view, the dream or hope is that two people can do a secure transaction between one another with very little friction, low cost. Blockchain itself, the way it's implemented, is essentially what is called a linked list. That is a series of transactions bundled up, and then they are validated by encrypting them, and then getting some number, doing some work to get some pattern. You have to do enough work to get the right pattern that would then validate that a bunch of people have looked at all these transactions, put them all together, and done all this work to prove that, that's the whole proof of work thing. If I do enough work on it, and if there's enough people that do enough work on it, then that validates somehow that all these transactions are good. It doesn't matter if they were bogus transactions to begin with. As long as they got into the system and they're in the blockchain, they're good, which is another fault, I think. And then once one block is created, and the people that did all that work, if they were the ones to create it, they get rewarded with this an incentive to do that or validate those transactions. And then the key, or the cryptographic key that you create from creating, looking at those transactions, is then uses the link to the next block, or the previous block actually. And so that's the linked list. So the key developed based on the contents is linked to the previous block, or the next block. That way it's a linked list, and that way nothing can ever change throughout the chain, because if you do that, then it will ripple through and change everything and invalidate everything. That's essentially what it is. The thing that makes it useful and important is the consensus algorithm, that idea that everybody must go through and validate this together. It's a shared repository, and the information in that that is created, each one of those transactions, exists throughout all the nodes on the network, and that's one of the reasons that its performance is so poor. Besides the fact that it takes 10 minutes to actually generate one block. All right, so hopefully that was a good enough explanation for you for blockchain. I don't know. Tried to put it in terms that most people could understand. But the fact that it's immutable, in other words, it can't be changed, is a benefit in terms of being a ledger and a recorded history. Unfortunately, just because it's in there doesn't mean that it's right. It just means that everyone agrees that it's right. some fresh, well, we just did some fresh pressed rosin last night of Goliath. We have a few other that came up pretty good too. All right, so that's about it. That's what I wanted to say about blockchain. I still think it's out there for us to manipulate, make a little money off of. I still am of the opinion that it must come down to an ungodly level in order to wipe out all the continuing frauds that are out there, in order to make space for the few projects that may bubble to the top, and so now we can concentrate on those and put some serious money into perhaps coming up with a tenable solution. But even that, I'm really doubtful. I think we were sold a bill of goods that was all hype. True Grit says, maybe someday I'll understand, but that day it'll probably disappear and something else will replace it. That's probably true. I personally think that that pot stocks, cannabis, hemp, the hemp world is the future. That is the biggest growth industry that we are going to see in our lifetimes. So, anyhow, that's about all I have to say. I want to thank everybody for showing up. Please hit that like button. And we'll see you next time. Yes, I am the dude from Earth. Yeah, I have mentioned that as well, All Eyes, that Canadian stocks, I've said, are grossly overvalued. They have retraced. They've popped up a little bit since the Farm Bill was introduced. I really don't expect that to go very far. We can take a look at it. So it's topping out approximately where I thought it would top out on the bounce back up. And I think we'll settle in probably under $30. That is my guess. Eventually, I believe that we'll move down. I thought we would move down below 20 eventually. I wasn't really counting on the hemp farm bill providing such a boost to it, but there's a lot of hype associated with that as well. But there are still issues that need to overcome, and that's going to take a while. And you're right that most of these companies are Canadian companies. There are some international and stuff, and there's still a stigma across the United States in many states, although most states are now on board. And now that hemp is legal, but with a lot of restrictions to grow across the United States, it's going to open the door for some research and CBDs and other products and industrial products that I think are going to take a little while to get hold, but I think it's going to prove to be one of the most important cash crops of our lifetime. Can I show you how to grow weed on Dude from Earth? We can actually use this channel, I think, to do that as well, although some people might get a little upset. I've talked about it a little bit. But I would have no problem with making that some features and maybe, once or twice a week. Do I still see the U.S. companies taking over the established Canadian ones? Oh yeah, once the U.S. companies come online, the Canadian companies will have no chance unless. I mean, some of them already have a fair stronghold, but it's mostly geared around the medicinal and recreational industry. The big industry is going to be the industrial one. So yeah, even the ones that have solidified global contracts, they simply cannot compete in the same environment with U.S. companies. That's just a fact. Well, shrapnels, I don't know if you're a serious grower or not, but we'll be talking about some serious growing techniques. Am I a Black Sabbath fan? Yes, the very first album that I ever purchased was Master of Reality by Black Sabbath. And there was a song on there that is a tribute to marijuana called Sweet Leaf. All right, yeah. Sure, if you're a Black Sabbath fan, you know exactly the song I'm talking about. Anyways, I bought it when it came out. That's how fucking old I am. No, not like you. I can learn a lot. What the fuck does that mean? I have no idea what that means. I think Shrapnels is trying to be a troll, but doing a very poor job of it. Alright. Now we're done. Now we must say goodbye. I'm going to click the stop streaming button and say goodbye. Take care, guys. You know, we should end up with the Fight Club ending scene. The death of Enterprise Blockchain. It's going to be a very strange time.